Hello, friends. Happy New Year. Today, we're going to talk about emotional incest. You heard me right, emotional incest. Now, have you ever met someone who tells you that their parent is their best friend or their confidant? Yet, this person would sometimes wish their parents gave them more privacy? Sometimes you get into situations whereby someone tells you that even if they're married, they would like to live their lives with their parents. Now, it may appear as though these people have a very beautiful, lovely, deep-seated bond with their parents, but that is not the case. You see, emotional incest, is also called covert incest, is a situation in which a parent relates with their child as though their child were a spouse. So they kind of let the child feel the emotional needs that a spouse or a partner is supposed to feel in their lives. This comes from an unhealthy family dynamic. Now, most often than not, this happens unconsciously. And there's one thing I have to say here. Contrary to overt incest, in which there's a sexual relationship between the parent and the child, in emotional incest, there isn't physical intimacy, so it is devoid of physical intimacy. So, what would you notice in such a relationship? The parent seeks comfort from the child, the parent seeks financial advice from the child, relationship advice from the child, or the parent is seeking some form of loyalty from the child, like discussing inappropriate subject with the child. The child does not need this. The child does not need to advise you on financial stuff or emotional stuff. Now, the issue with this is it makes the child feel as though the child is some sort of privilege. Imagine a parent discussing with a young child, maybe it could be 14-year-old, they're 15-year-old, a young teenager even, about things that other parents don't necessarily talk to with their child. This child in this situation could tend to feel like, okay, I'm getting some privilege that my peers or my mates are not getting. So it may appear to the child like a sweet bond. However, this is very unhealthy. Now, some of the signs of emotional incest are going to include things like the parent is looking to the child for emotional support. The child always says the parent is their best friend, and yet sometimes the child could quote unquote hate the parent. The child always feels forced to take sides between two parents. The child sometimes is brought into a situation of triangulation between both parents, where the child feels like, okay, I have to be the mediator between both parents in case of an argument. And then sometimes the child tends to find themselves taking much more adult roles. The child also finds it difficult to have romantic relationships. The child will also find themselves in situations where they feel terrible guilt. Self-harming behaviors may develop, like they could have the tendency to self-harm. The child could have sexual difficulties. For example, it could either be repressed sexuality or inappropriately overt sexuality. The child tends to seek so much validation from people because the child has some sort of low self-esteem, and the child is always seeking validation from people. Also, you have the child feeling like they couldn't fully enjoy their childhood, and you notice that the parent also sometimes panics or gets jealous if there's any sort of romantic partner in the child's life. It's almost like the parent gets into panic mode. They want to overprotect, quote unquote, this child. And then the parents' needs to the child, the parents' needs take priority. The child feels like, okay, I have to do what my parents want. I have to please them. And in such people tend not to be able to set proper boundaries with other people. It's difficult for them to set boundaries. And then the child tends to idealize one parent. It's like one parent is a good parent. This is a parent who has suffered with me. This is a parent that has done everything for me, to the detriment of the other parent. So the invasive parent is idealized, while the other parent is looked upon as some sort of a bad parent. And then there's other things. There's a lot of things, but these are some of the signs. These are some of the telltale signs of emotional incest. Now, what are the causes of emotional incest? Emotional incest generally is a result of heavy stressors, which tend to flow from an unhealthy family dynamic. Some of the main stressors could be things like a divorce or a separation. Maybe there could be conflict in a partner, between spouses over things like infidelity, finances, addiction, work, whatever is going to cause a great conflict. Also, the death of a spouse or a partner could cause it. And then one thing very important, intergenerational tendencies or patterns. So whatever a parent inherits, if a parent was in a situation of emotional incest growing up and they do not realize this on time and try to work on it, they most likely would pass that same pattern to their kid because this is what they know. Now, what are the potential effects of emotional incest? Interestingly, emotional incest is not going to affect only the child. No, it's going to affect both parent and child. We're going to start with the parent because there's not so much effect on the parent. But then you notice that the parent tends to find it difficult to form healthy romantic relationships. The parent tends to find it difficult, the invasive parent in this case, tends to find it difficult to form fulfilling friendships. And now, one also very important thing which causes so many of the problems that the child is going to have is that the parent tends to not understand or not cater to the emotional needs of the child in the proper way. So the child is left emotionally void, something like that. So the parent cannot understand nor can they cater for the child's emotional needs. Now, looking at the child, what are some of the effects of emotional incest on the child? There's so many of them. Of course, I'm going to give you a non-exhaustive list of these things. First of all, the child suffers from emotional neglect, and it's quite interesting, surprising, because the child seems to be in a very close bonded relationship with their parents. It seems like everything is going well, but then because the child is the one meeting the parents' needs, means the child's growth is stunted. The child is fulfilling an adult role. The child's emotional needs are not being met. So despite the apparent closeness, the child is suffering from emotional neglect, and this can lead to things like mental issues like low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, and just to name a few. And then we also notice that the child tends to face difficulties in establishing romantic relationships with other partners. Why is this so? Because the child is torn. The child feels like investing emotionally in a secondary person is almost like taking away from the love they have for their parents. So the child's attachment to the parents becomes primary, such that the child cannot form a healthy bond with another person. And that's why the child has difficulties in forming healthy romantic relationships. And following from this point is the fact that the child is going to resist commitment. The child is going to leave relationships early for whatever reason, or the child cannot maintain relationships, and the child finds it difficult to commit to relationships because their primary emotional needs they need to fulfill are those of the parents, not theirs. And also, the child also faces difficulties in establishing healthy friendships with their peers. Then, the child also finds it difficult to develop their own sense of identity. The victim, in this case, finds it difficult to develop a sense of personal identity because all they want is for their parents. They want to give themselves, they want to offer themselves on the altar of sacrifice for their parents. So they find it difficult to develop a sense of who they are, their own personal identity. And their opinions and thought processes, most often than not, are a reflection of what their parents think, the invasive parents in this case, not what they think as a person. And then the child also has that compulsive desire to achieve. I need to achieve this because the child feels like that is what's going to please my parents, that is what's going to make my parents proud. And we've spoken already about appearance of sexual issues, which could either be repression sexual repression, or acting out. And then the child could also experience the development of perfectionistic tendencies. I want to be perfect. I want to be the perfect child. And the child has terrible feelings of guilt and shame when they feel like they are doing anything that is making them less perfect or less lovable than for their parents. And these are things that are going to get into a decreased self-esteem and a poor self-image. So there's a tendency to seek validation, idealizing of the invasive parent, and also one important thing, the child is also going to develop feelings of loneliness. So the person is going to apparently be so happy, apparently be so nice, but the person is really going to have feelings of loneliness. The person is really going to feel alone and lonely. And the person is going to be more attracted to people who are self-centered, and it makes sense. So instead of being attracted to people who want a healthy relationship, the person is going to be most likely more attracted to people who are selfish, self-centered, don't care about them. Because it helps the victim not to have to take away from the love, in quote, they want to show their parents and invest in another emotional relationship. So since they have somebody who is self-centered or who doesn't care so much about them, it's a good thing for them. It's a win-win because they can kind of be in a relationship with this person but not have to invest themselves so much into this person. And then these things can also lead to things like depression, anxiety, other personality disorders. And there's one thing, there's a feeling of lack of joy and satisfaction with life. Such people, they just feel like they have no worth, life is not worth it. There's nothing they're happy about in life. The only thing sometimes that could keep them alive is just like they only want to fulfill their parents' dreams. That is the only thing that's most important for them. They have nothing to live for unless pleasing their parents. Now let's talk about healing. How can one heal from this, be they parent or child? One important step is first of all to recognize the problem. If someone has recognized the problem, then they can practice journaling. So just journaling every day, keeping a diary, reflecting on these emotions and seeing how they are impeding your progress. That is actually a way to start self-help. However, most importantly, this person or the people involved, if someone recognizes that they are in a state of emotional incest, then they need to seek professional help. So you could see a coach, a counselor, a therapist, whatever, so that these people can walk you through the process of healing and growth. So thank you very much, dear friends, and I hope that this video is very informative to you. If there's anything you'd like to know, you can go into the comment section and let us know. And also, if you find yourself in a situation of emotional incest, or you know someone who finds themselves in this situation, you can go to the website that will be displayed and would most likely be in the video description, betterselfnowcoaching.com. Go to the website betterselfnowcoaching.com for all to get to know more about this, and hopefully you're going to receive good help to walk into a space of healing and growth. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye.